But I understood.
My husband says.
No,
You speak right here. I got a tear this big in my back.
Okay, I am going to call the planning board workshop to order. We're present, Mr. Sabazio, do you need to do anything? I know Helen Hardy cannot make it, she's at a class.
We're present.
You're all set, you don't need to take attendance or anything to
Open the meeting.
open the meeting?
I saw Lisa. So
want
this is
to-
a dual meeting.
It's a dual
Okay.
meeting, yes, that's why you're posted
As
on.
the chair of the planning board meeting, I will call the planning board committee. I will call our meeting to order at 6:30. There are 6 of our 5 members present. Helen Hardy is excused.
Okay, that's all right, Jeff,
No,
we
wait,
got it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6, 7. 6 to 7, and the planner is also here. We're going to reopen our workshop. We had a budget workshop prior to this. So, as I stated in the email, we are asking each of the boards to come before us, just so we can familiarize ourselves with you. Not everybody knows everything. And also to see how things are going with you and what you're expecting from us. So, that being said, does anybody on the council have any questions or anything that they would like to, for the planning board?
I'd like to hear what they have to say.
Great.
What are you guys working on?
Okay, as the chair, my job is to run an efficient, orderly meeting within the laws of the state of Rhode Island and the ordinances and zoning of the town. I also set the agenda and I make sure that everybody gets their item on the agenda in a timely fashion. Each person on the committee, some have been handed a volunteer assignment, some have volunteered to do different things. Each person is bringing forward things that is important to them, they feel is important to help the town move forward. And at that point, I don't vote. I try not to put my 2 cents in, and I open the topic, close the topic. I don't vote unless there's a tie. I've talked to 2 attorneys, and that's the way it should be. And why don't you talk to the members and ask them what they're doing?
Thank you, Mr. Sabazio.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody else that would like to say something from the planning board? Lisa?
I'm just basically trying to catch up to everything that's going on.
Hey, let me tell you, she asked a couple of questions the other night that were a couple of the most pertinent questions that were asked. How's that, Lisa?
Thank you. So you get an A plus. You get an A plus.
For that meeting.
For that meeting.
For that meeting, that's correct.
Jeff, you had it?
Yeah, I started out on the blight ordinance and it's kind of grown from there, but it's all tied in with each other, and that is that I'm working on the municipal court. I think everybody knows that. I think that's important to the blight ordinance because we need it for enforcement. But I also think that we need to think about our part-time zoning official. I understand that money's tight, we don't want to hire somebody full-time. On the other hand, the way things are now without a municipal court, I doubt we want to be sending this guy, Mark, to Superior Court for 6-8 hours a week, because he's only putting, I think he's only putting in 12, 14? I don't even know.
Brent.
Huh?
No, they're not. They're talking about Mark Corner.
Right.
They're not talking Brent.
So he doesn't have any time to go there and do that, so I'm assuming that's the reason why I asked the question today, we haven't really assigned fines to any of our violations. And I mean, it's probably smart for us to do that now, but we need to get out of that. The municipal court also we would do better on the traffic situation. Now, Chief here's, I talked to him about a month and a half ago. He tells me that 2 years ago, please tell me if I'm wrong. We did about $70,000 in traffic ticket that we got back, $70,000 that we got back from the state. I checked with the state, the Central Court Bureau, and just got a magic number from them, and they seem to think that we would be getting probably north of 100,000 for the same tickets if we had our own municipal court. Now, then the chief again, he explained to me that, I think, again, keep me honest here, we only did half of last year for 6,000.
I don't recall the figures.
That's a number that I've gotten. I've asked to talk to the captain, but he hasn't returned my calls yet.
I do know, though, that what we did talk about, I believe I talked to Denise about it, though, that the municipal court, yes, it can make money for towns, but you also got to put money into it. You're going to pay a judge, you're going to pay an attorney for the town that has to be there. You also have to have clerks on scene that are going to take care of all the court costs, all the paperwork. You're going to have one officer on overtime that has to remain there until the court is done. You also, any officers that wrote tickets that have to appear in court, you're also paying them. So, I mean, you got to weigh, does it work for larger cities and towns? Most definitely. But you got to weigh it's not just, okay, we got $100,000 in tickets or $50,000 in tickets. Yeah, that's good and all, but you also got to sink money into a municipal court. And judges don't come cheap. You can't have a magistrate or an attorney. You're going to have a judge. I mean, it's a municipal court judge. For example, Paul DeMeo was a municipal court judge in the town of Johnston. Val Lombardi was the municipal court judge in North Providence. These are judges. So it's not a bad idea, but this is something that you have to look into, delve into it.
Well, Chief, don't we pay a police officer now to go and do that on overtime and time and a half?
Well, you pay an officer, you're right, to go to court, but he's not necessarily there the entire time. He's there once our cases are done, he goes home. But municipal court could go up to as much as 4 hours. You're gonna have an officer there to keep order. Also to run things back and forth to the clerks, because the clerk can't be in the same area as the court. She's gonna be like in a back room somewhere. That's how it's done. So I mean, is it a bad idea? No. Am I against it? No, but I just think it's something that has to be researched.
All those things, and I think that's what you're reading out, Jeff.
He's right, and what he said, but we can run the municipal court as often or as little as we need to. We don't have to run a full-time judge 8 hours a day. We can have 4 hours sometime at night, maybe once a month, maybe twice a month.
Are you still at the planning stages of this? It's not at a point to bring it forward to the council?
Hasn't even come to our committee yet. Each person is working on their specific item, individual work versus a lot of talk every night.
So you've met, or will meet again, I'm assuming, with the chief after hearing is what he brought out tonight?
No, he did, actually, he's been very good. He's discussed quite a bit of this at our first meeting. I need to set up a meeting with the captain, but again, he's got to answer his phone.
I'll talk to him Monday morning.
The other thing about a municipal court is that we're not just going to use them for traffic. We're going to use them for our zoning violations, which means that if somebody's out here on Route 6 and they got a trash heap and Mark Corner, is that his name? Mark Corner goes there and he cites them. That guy's going to be in front of our court within 30 days. That's the farthest away it will be. Okay? We should be doing that. Otherwise, we're never going to get ahead. Time-wise, it's going to behoove us to do that. Plus, they're talking about dog violations, and I mean, there's a lot in the list. Mike Chippendale's working with me on it too, to show me some how other municipal courts have been set up and run. And when I'm ready to bring it to the board, I will. We've just been kind of doing
That
budgets
was
and
one of
stuff
my
like that.
questions, is I know and Mr. Savazio, you mentioned it, that some people were given volunteer assignments, or people volunteered for assignments, those are two different things. Am I
Yeah.
correct? So how is that working for everybody, that you're either volunteering or assigned a volunteer? Is that working out? Is that, evidently Jeff, you've really taken the ball and run with it. I
Are
know,
you asking me?
Mike, no, I'm not asking you.
okay.
Mike, I know you did some, the other night, you presented some things that were going on that you've investigated.
Yeah.
It's an area of interest for you. Is that, am I correct? I kind of got that impression that what you were
Yeah.
presenting is an area of interest for you.
It's a focus item, and that is good for any of the boards and commissions to actually have work assigned and work accomplished and a motion prepared when you come to the meeting, so that we can discuss it intellectually and accurately and come up with a recommendation for the council. So, yes.
And I understand that, but what was your topic?
Just some, providing some background information on electricity.
Which is your,
Which is
you like that.
what
I remember you talking about kilowatts
I,
at length
Yeah,
for the
well,
solar.
there's a lot of razzle dazzle out there, and it's really good to have a reference data book along, just summary, so that when we're presented complicated information, or what sounds like complicated information, we've got just some basic facts we can lean on to keep us on track. And the other things that we do are also helpful when we're presenting to the council for follow-up, and that was the letter to the Providence Water Supply Board.
Yes.
Which is should be sent every year.
And that's in our packet for the
Yeah, that's,
next meeting.
Just nice to have something that you can forward of concern to all citizens. And, going forward, yes, we need to probably spend a little to make a little, which I mentioned the other night on the Economic
Mhm.
Development Council, that we should tap into professional resources to complement the volunteer work whenever possible. It could actually go under in a general category of training, because we're not generally up to speed on some of the specific issues that come before us. So money should be budgeted as appropriate to support the activities of the boards and commissions, so that progress is made. As you know, I've been on the planning board for more than a decade, and we're still dealing with some of the same issues, and there are constant changes at the state level which affect our purpose and sometimes our mission. Case in point would be the tax treaty and the solar farms. We thought we had a way to control some development that would benefit the town, and the biggest advantage of ours in that mission was capped by the state, which can pretty much do the same thing with the marijuana situation. So as much enthusiasm as we have as a board, is sometimes got to be focused, and I think, Ron's done a good job of that in terms of getting out, because all of us have, specialties or things that we're interested in. But above and beyond that, committees are authorized under the democratic rules, and committees are what we use in our state legislature and our federal legislature to try to clarify the issue so that it can be presented properly and action can be taken, so we don't have what we had in the future items that tend to be like Webster's dictionary. All the words are in the dictionary, so we should all be authors and publish books. But that's not necessarily the case. So it's been hard, it's a lot of work, and as you know, the public hearings that we have, the people that come before us are used to doing business statewide in a lot of cases, and present a real challenge for us. as part-timers, as volunteers. So again, a lot of what will come up in these conferences with the boards and commissions is probably more focused, and more funding to get more work done, as opposed to trying to, shoot them all down, sort them out later. We were not gonna be able to have multiple issues before us, and we should be focusing on what can we get done this year. The last thing I'd like to bring up as proof of that is our 5-year road plan, okay? It's illogical to have a 5-year road plan and a 2-year council. Okay? There's really nothing that you can plan on 5 years if you're not gonna be around to fund it and to control it. And a lot of the things in the 5-year road plan, some of our bridges, some of the roads, really need work, and we don't want them to fall in the same category as the roof on the school and have the same thing fail before anybody has a chance to act on it. So these things, a lot of it's just logic, and I think some of that could be addressed with the Charter Review Commission, which should be supported vigorously so that it puts teeth in what we do. And just rotational terms are in effect for all of the boards and commissions, and yet rotational terms are not in place for the council. So it's kind of like everything's new every 2 years. That's really hard I can't imagine, it's hard for me when new members come in. That's an adjustment period for the planning board, but it's even harder for the council, okay? It's much more important than regular duties on a regular basis. Lots of hours, lots of time spent doing routine work that has to be done. When there's theoretically could be a brand new council every 2 years.
I
So,
agree. Thank you.
Again, the investment in the charter, the investment in your boards and commissions, okay, and recognition for the boards and commissions, which is what you're doing now. A chance to be heard, a chance to interact. By charter, I think all the boards and commissions are supposed to get together once a year. Or not just public report, but network a little bit. So there's
Well,
not
I think that's what
overlapping
we're
networks.
hoping to do this time around, so.
That's been talked about a lot, it's never happened, and that, along with recognition, which you started already for the boards and commissions, it'd be really good to have a once scheduled meeting with voluntary basis. Everybody just shows up, shares and networks a little bit, so that the old folks can help the new folks and at least know who they're working for.
Sounds good.
Now you're sorry you asked me. a question.
No, I'm marking it down, Mike, that you have a meeting with everyone. Not sure when that's gonna happen right now, we kind of need it out with budget workshop, but thank you. Joe, do you have anything you'd like to add? What is your volunteer assignment?
I was asked to review the ordinances and the subdivision regulations by Ron. Also, we have an agenda item with Scott Millar that I was working with Jennifer on before when I was chair, that's coming forth with the accessory uses on the farms and forest, which I think can help the town immensely as far as bringing business into town, or bringing people into town, and I think he's got a grant that's running out soon, so he wants to, this isn't costing the town any money. So we're basically having somebody doing work, he's writing ordinances for us that we can do as we wish with, so we're not obligated to anything, but it's free. I mean, he wrote, material for our zoning ordinance for farm accessory uses, so these farms and stuff can attract people into town, and people come to town, they, go to other businesses and stuff, so it's a win for us. So I'm glad to see that coming forward again, because it was put on hold for a while. I know there was some backlash from different groups about it, but I think the town has the ability to only allow what they think is suitable for the town, obligated by this state to do whatever he suggests, but it gives us ideas, you know, as a starting point of what we want to do with our zoning ordinance, if we wish to, and the board would like to. Also, the 5-year road plan is something that I wanted the board to get back when I asked Jennifer and Ron to contact Bob and see if he can come out, because we haven't done it for a couple of years. And, you know, we had a lot of turnover with our DPW, but I think our roads are starting to show a lot of wear. And we really got to figure out how we're going to get this town so we can drive around without dodging potholes. And, you know, some of the roads are getting really bad. And, you know, it's tough when your DPW director changes and, you know, then the next guy, learning curve comes in and takes a year to get up to speed with what's going on in town. So I think he's been here for quite a while now. So it's a good time for him to, you know, go over everything and review what the previous directors had done. And the other thing that I was going to volunteer to do was work with Jennifer on the solar, on the update to the solar ordinance, give her some ideas so we can present something to the council. You know, I'm going to do that separate from the board, planning boards. I'm just going to work solo with Jennifer on that. You know, that she can present that to you, and if the board wants to review it, you know, they have the opportunity to, you know, give a recommendation to the council on that. So that's about what I've been up to so recently, you know. Just trying to make sure we're staying within our procedural things and stuff, you know, because that's kind of my thing, is procedure. So, but other than that, you know, we're busy.
May I add, Scott Miller's coming in on the 3rd, and hopefully we'll send him out that evening with an okay to move forward with one of the 2 plans, or partial one of the 2 plans that he can finish up, bring back to us before his grant runs out.
Lisa, I'm just going around, so Anthony, you're last, and then Jennifer.
Pretty much assigned to see what's going on with business that could be in town, what's going on with business in town. So I've been trying to schedule a meeting with somebody, and it's just not, between sickness and travel and everything else, haven't really been able to get in touch with that individual. But I've been trying to figure out, short of going and finding those maps of.
That's a private joke.
I think I'm gonna do that.
They'll have all that, and I looked, I had all of that stuff from the former EDAC. It was out in my barn, and last year I had a dumpster, and I'm thinking it went in there, because my barn leaked.
I messed it.
I had to get rid of a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
But the EDAC will be helpful to you for that.
My husband might have
Yeah.
some of that stuff.
Yeah.
He was chair.
Okay, so that's something that would be helpful to have a visual, you know, what's going on and what could possibly change and everything, so. And I've been talking to different business owners and such around, so that's about it. I don't really have anything solid to bring forth, but.
Thank you. Anthony?
My complaint is, the volunteering part, it's only 30% of my grade. And attendance is another 30%, and Ron's laying a final exam on me, and I don't know if I'll be able to handle that. I think it should be more. Okay? Just joking.
I assume that.
We're going with it.
Lighten it up a little bit. The planning board's moving, I mean, I think what we're doing is, a lot of the things we're doing and want to do are going to make enemies. I'm not going to make people happy. And if it continues the way it is, the town just stays in a status quo. And a lot of stuff is really for the future of the town of Forster. I mean, it's a great little town, can be a better town. And a lot of things coming forward down the road. Route 6, zoning on Route 6 is gonna be important. That's one of the things that Simon said was kind of, that I volunteered for. I believe there's a lot of things on Route 6 that if it was changed, would probably open it up a little bit more for maybe some outside people.
I think the last council requested that, of the planning board to review the zoning that is on.
We
Route 6.
talked about it before the council even mentioned it.
But it's not a race, it's not to see who,
You
so
know,
I'm just saying we're on board with that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anthony.
which is good, okay? And one of the, and the last key speaker that we had, first, what was that gentleman, please?
Scott, yeah.
Scott Gibbs that came, and I believe you were there, and the first words out of his mouth is, we need to be aggressive. And the second thing out of his mouth was, the state and businesses are hurting for land. And that kind of sounds like the only thing we have here. And I think the Route 6 corridor, which is, now when I'm saying, oh, we have this land, I don't expect, we just need to have an area that commercially can profit the town, okay, which would be the Route 6 corridor, maybe some of 101 and some of 102. But you have to get one before you start doing the other. And I think if we can just change some zoning, which could benefit some homeowners, and I don't know if you all, how I explained it, there's a lot of homes on Route 6 that are in an AR zone, and they're stuck there, and have to sell their property as an AR zone. If the person in that home or in that AR zone had dual zoning, then they could possibly sell it as a commercial piece of property or a business piece of property, and would give them an out. And then someone who's looking for a piece of property can look at a home that's zoned commercial, that has enough acreage, there's already a well, there's already whatever, and it could benefit a lot of people to do a lot of things. And it's just something that I guess we really have to dig in and, you know, try to make it work.
So is that what your volunteer assignment is zoning on Route 6?
I think, is it?
I'd like to add one thing, Anthony skipped over, he was correct. What Scott Gibbs said was, the town has to be aggressive in the acquisition of land to make it available for commercial development. So he was saying to us that we should be buying land and making it available to anybody that wants to come in versus.
I recall him saying that,
Yeah,
yes.
see, I never owned a book in college. I listened, it was very good.
Was that good?
Jennifer, do you have anything? I'm looking at the time.
Sure.
so-
Yeah, so you can hear that everyone on the planning board sort of has different things that they're championing, and I try to help as much as I can, but it's really a juggling situation. And, I try to put what I feel is more priority to things that will actually help the town, but an important part is to have a champion behind any actions that you do in the town. So that's how come I'm glad that people want to go ahead with their projects. One thing that I'm always aware, though, is subdivisions and major land development applications. Like for me as the planner, those are the most important things, and sometimes I think that those get down on the list, but for me they're priority because that's the bulk of what I do. And then the other things, these other projects are in addition.
May I add one thing to that? We waste a lot of our planners' time doing secretarial work. I always say a full-time planner. Maybe it would be good to hire specifically, and you don't have any money, so I'm just saying this for fun, a part-time secretary. Because really, she does do a lot of secretarial work, which is not, it wastes her time, is the bottom line, and it wastes your money. So, something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, I think that was informative. Does anybody from the council now have anything that they want to add or talk?
I do.
Go for it.
Jennifer has something that she'd like done, all she has to do is ask to have it done, and she knows that. We have 2 clerks available for her, and myself, I would help her anytime, so. I just want to
So we
let you
can
know that.
spread, maybe we can spread some of that around.
I'm sorry?
I said, maybe we could spread some of that work around and help free her up.
So you want the board to do secretarial work?
No, that's not what it says.
I'm trying to,
No, no, that
Well, what
wasn't,
is it?
that's not what,
no, I'm trying to figure out.
Ron,
what
you
it's-
have your hearing aid during?
No, I don't actually, because I was still stuck on, Ms.
Sue said she had 2 secretaries
Right.
available,
And so
plus herself.
let me clarify, because like I always say, I'm old and I get confused. Anthony just said for me to go easy, so I'm gonna drop the subject. Thank you.
that was a ploy.
Anthony, you're a big help. Attaboy.
Jennifer, I sent you, did you get my email? I sent you an email earlier today. It was, Gordon sent it to me from the State House, and it was all about the solar.
Oh,
So
no, I did not.
There's a link, and it goes to a municipal site, and it has 4 different things that you can look at on solar. It had some sample ordinances, it had some rules, it had some charts, but I just forwarded that to you. So I would have printed it out at home, but I didn't have the time, and there's a bunch of things. So it's in there.
Okay, thank you. We opened our budget workshop with the Pledge of Allegiance, but now we have more people here. We're going to open the open session of the town council meeting, so if everyone would please stand and pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I do want a moment of silence, please. Shirley Hopkins passed away. We know Chris and Beth Stone, Chris's mother-in-law. Peter Shalcross, his wife is a co-worker for us, and she does a lot of volunteer work. He had passed away, and John Shaharian, who is Pam Fontaine's father, also passed away. So if we could have a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. And as Heidi mentioned, we've been saying that far too often. I'm hoping it's just a difficult time for all. I need to check off public comment. Audrey, you have,
I have just a question. I know on the ball field, the grant's gonna be due in November,
yes,
and I'm afraid that we're gonna lose that if we don't do something.
we've awarded the grant, the bid to the gentleman to begin there, and he's just waiting for whatever, the ground.
I'm sure it's been.
November comes fast.
I know, it does, yes.
Definitely does.
It definitely does, and it's something I know I've been talking with Mr. Law, he's on top of it. We're all there.
I'm just getting nervous about
Yeah.
losing that grant.
Yeah, we're there.
Okay.
Thank you. That was it. First agenda item is consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I would entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to move the swearing in of new officer Zachary Billadu to this point in the meeting.
Second.
Chief? Where is it? Oh, I didn't know where he was. Oh, we didn't vote. Because we should vote. Thank you. Got a motion, it's been seconded, and all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, now we're good.
Now we're good, thank you, Chris. Chief, would you please do the honor?
Zachary, front and center. I'll introduce you to Officer Zachary Billy Duke.
Aye.
He started here on March 11th. I feel he's going to be a really good fit for the town. And I'd like to read a biography of Zach. He's 30 years old and the oldest of 4 siblings. He was born and raised in North Providence. Zach was an active football player in high school and a member of the North Providence High Cougars. Upon graduation from high school, Zach began what has become a 13-year and counting career in the United States Army. He joined the Army as an intelligence analyst and attended basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Intelligence training also at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. His first assignment was with the 126th Aviation Battalion Headquarters Unit. He served with them on a mission to the Dominican Republic. Soon after, he was transferred to the 118th Military Police Battalion and volunteered for deployment to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. After deployment to Cuba, Zach was selected for a counter-narcotics mission. He was trained and certified as a criminal analyst and assigned to the Drug Enforcement Administration. He served with the DEA for over 5 years until he was selected to become a member of the Special Operations Community and deployed to Afghanistan on a counterinsurgency mission. Upon his return from Afghanistan, Zach began a career in law enforcement with the East Providence Police Department. During this time, he also attended counterintelligence special agent course. Upon completion of this training, Zach and his team deployed again, this time to Syria. Once in northeast Syria, Zach would partner with the Syrian Democratic Forces, helping in the fight to destroy the Islamic State. He returned home earlier this year and was lucky enough to become a member of the Foster Police Department. He is excited to continue his career in law enforcement to serve the residents of Foster. Zach is also engaged to be married this June to his fiancée, Lisa, who will be pinning his badge on him tonight.
I like the part where you say he has the honor of joining. I like that.
You, Officer Zachary Villadu, solemnly swear that you will be true and faithful unto the town of Foster and support the town charter, and that you will be true and faithful unto this state, and support the laws and constitution thereof, and the Constitution of the United States, and that you will well and truly execute the position of police officer, for which you have been elected, appointed, or until further engaged in your place, or until you be legally discharged thereof, so help you God.
I do.
Congratulations, welcome aboard.
That's why your resume sounds like you couldn't keep a job. You bet.
Congratulations and welcome.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I know. Well, congratulations. Be careful out there.
Bye-bye now.
Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing for the preliminary budget. There are copies up here if anybody wants a copy of it. I'll give you all a moment to come on up. Thank you. Next one's to end tonight. Is that going to end tonight? Okay, so I'm going to open the public hearing for the budget. You have it in front of you. We'll start with the general government. On there you have the various changes and the proposed for fiscal year 2020. Does anyone have any questions on that? You have it, it says, it should say at the bottom, public hearings. You want this?
I couldn't change
Oh,
my
it's
column,
not changed.
remember, I just like.
Yeah,
think you mentioned
We-
something that had to be.
I will, I'm trying to get all my notes together here.
Okay.
I have a note here.
It's in this one if you want.
I have the note here. We have, within this budget, tonight we discussed in our, budget workshop, some salary increases for the various department heads within, the town hall. So there are several that had increases, well, they all had increases, some were at 2%, some were significantly more, to bring them up to, adjustment to the rest of the state, so that they're, with other municipalities, so that they're within the ballpark. Ms. Russ had made a comparison to being in the ballpark, outside the ballpark, in the ballpark with the seat, in the ballpark watching the game.
Nosebleed section, not in the
Yes.
parking lot, can't watch the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
So there were some of those, and those we had moved forward tonight. They're not reflected within this budget because we couldn't get it done in time. We ended at 6, so that's where those are, but we do have them available if you'd like to discuss. Does anyone have any questions on the general government? Yes.
Just a question, seeing that the union is in negotiation, is anything reflected in here for that?
We have a couple of areas that the town clerk said that she would be able to take from if she needs to. It was pretty much planned, a certain increase in each of the departments. So because it's a negotiation, they'll have to adjust their budget once it's done.
It is a bottom line budget.
The bottom line budget by department, so they don't have to come up with new money. There is a plan for each of the 2 department heads affected for them to make them up.
Mr. May?
Can you tell me when the final payment is due for the water supply board?
I want to say 5 or 6 years from now.
5 or 6 years?
We're only in the 4th payment, it seems like time seems like it's flying, except for that debt payment.
Okay.
Mrs. Dillon, do you want people to state their addresses? I mean, I knew Mr. May, so I just recognize. Do you want them to state their name and name? Okay, so I knew Mr. May, but if you're going to speak, if you would just state your name for the clerk. No, I know, I recognize you, Mr. May, without. So any further questions on the general government? Yes.
I just have a question about the contingency. I know that a lot of the extra legal fees come out of it, because back in, I wanna say 2008, it was like $9,000, and now we're up to $45,000. And I know 100 years ago, there used to be a line item that was kind of like solicitor's contingency, where any overages came out of that. It's very hard for the public to know how much is actually going to legal fees if we only know what their base salary is, but we don't know what the additional stuff is. Can anybody tell me to date for this year, how much of the contingency has been used?
About $9,000, $9,000 to $10,000, of which I would say the majority was for legal fees this year. But generally speaking, if we have to pay out for some sort of legal action, it comes from there. Sometimes we've had to hire specialists for legal action, arbitration, it has come from there. There are things, so it's not just legal fees, but legal.
Specialties, if you will.
Right, there are other things that we have to. But generally speaking, that's usually what it is. If we have to make a payment out of it for a settlement or something.
Right, but contingency is also, I mean, I always thought contingency was like emergencies.
It is as
something
well.
goes down and
It
you
is.
have to have it up and running right now,
It is.
that's the money you use.
And I do recall, Lynn, there being a line
A line
solicitor.
item.
And as you said, it was years and years ago, and I don't know why it's disappeared, but probably something to do with legalities, just formatting of the,
I honestly think that that contingent, there was only one, they just called it solicitor's contingency versus contingency. So what happened was, I think in 2011, when we lost all that state aid, they had to use that money for more than just, it wasn't the solicitor, so it wasn't transparent. So basically, it's just for whatever comes up, that there was no money in the budget. Our budget was very tight at the time, I mean, in fact, the budget that was adopted was changed mid-year because of the mid-year changes in state aid. I think it might have actually been on the council at that point. So, at that point in time, the contingency wasn't just used for solicitors, it was used for other things. So
Right,
At that
yeah.
point, I think that we just changed
A
it
leak
to.
in the roof or something,
Right.
that couldn't be covered by.
Right, we had a communication system that we had to work on for the police department, we took from there. We've taken various things that have occurred.
for a road, I remember, for a
Something
bridge or a road.
happened for, there's some overages for a bridge, and so it's been a variety of different things.
So calling it the town council contingency is broader and covers more areas, so.
Or I just, wondered if it wouldn't be more, I guess, transparent if they had their own, if you could estimate. I mean,
But
I
then
don't
we would
know.
have to have a line for everything that we take out of the contingency fund. Because it's not just the solicitor.
No, I understand that, but where the
It's-
solicitors, I just remember what it used to be.
Right, and things change, unfortunately.
It's a litigious society, and it's only getting worse, so if the more we're engaged in lawsuits that are frivolous or otherwise, then the more we're gonna have to spend to defend them.
We've had a lot of
And
lawsuits.
we know we've had a lot.
A lot of lawsuits.
We know we have, so. Anything else under general government? Okay, moving on to Department 11, which is finance. And this is 2 pages. Are there any questions there?
And again, this, for the deputy treasurer, it doesn't reflect what
No.
you had discussed prior to tonight.
Anything further? Okay, moving on to Department 14, which is planning. Did I?
Yeah.
Yep, 12, thank you. This single-sided isn't working for me.
I'm sorry.
I complain because I don't like double-sided. Social services, any questions there? Okay, now to 14, planning. There is a large amount there, part of it is for the GIS maps, which we know we're all in need of, the planning board was just discussing that. Any other questions? That's not all that here, not the planning. No, I mean, I think they all know the different boards, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I see a lot of familiar faces out there. So, that you know what each of the departments do.
Know what the increases or decreases were and stuff, that's all this is gonna be. So this last question, go.
Well, I thought that's what we were doing here. I thought I was asking them if they want any questions. I thought they were asking questions,
Let's go
no?
with that, no, I can't believe it not.
Okay, libraries, anything there? Okay, they're saving it up. The next one is,
Gonna gang up
yeah,
on us, everything.
at the financial town meeting, they're all gonna have all their questions. Departments 80 miscellaneous, it used to be 16. You can see it's changed a little.
So if we move forward at the, when we move forward at the financial town meeting, if we get rid of 16 and 17, I won't have to show that anymore, we'll create a separate department. But right now, in order to show a balanced budget, you almost have to show it.
Yes.
Yes, Ed Robinson, I'd like to see that 2175 in the cemetery fund restored to the budget. And I know we're gonna have a discussion later on, but I'd like to see that put back in.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm making notes of that, we're not adopting the budget tonight, so we'll discuss it further. Moving on to Department 20, Public Works. Any questions there? It's page 9.
Okay, I got lost. We went back and forth.
I know.
The single,
We'll wait.
Things change. Save the paper.
Any questions? Okay, here we go. Oh, yeah, Walter.
Is the Walter May, is the monies allocated for paving, is that in?
That's in the capital. This is the, yeah, this is operational. We'll discuss capital right after this.
We're getting there, Walter.
Any other questions about Public Works? Okay, Department 21, Parks and Recreation. That's not the show. Okay. Department 30 and 32 is for police and dispatch. Any questions there?
This is an easy crowd.
I know. They
Stop
don't know.
choosing it.
I'd rather have it than that. Well, we need more wait time. That was something I wasn't good in the classroom. Okay, moving on to the animal control, and as you know, we now contract out with Situate. Any questions there? Okay, public safety, others. Any questions there?
I had a question.
Oh, yeah,
Joe Carey, Oak Hill Road. The ambulance corps stipends, why are they decreased by
You
$10,000?
want me to explain that to you?
yep,
That was my suggestion, Joe. They had $30,000 in last year. They requested $30,000 this year. I asked Kelly to pull up the actuals, because I could see in 1 year and hear what the actuals were. In 2018, they had $30,000, they expended $19,216. 2019, at this year, this current year, halfway through, they've expended 8,527. So if we multiply that by 2 for the rest of the year, we have 17,054. Well under the 30,000. Mr. Walden pointed out in one of the workshops that if they didn't use the 30, it would come back to us at the end of the year, which is true. However, we need to balance this budget and we need the money now. And just the way it's tracking, and he said there's been, the calls have been flat, in other words, no spikes. So it seems that 20,000 should cover all of the stipends, and the 10,000 we can use to plug somewhere else.
I just was curious because it was, 1/3 of their stipend, so I didn't know.
Just
I mean,
wasn't,
if they're not using the money.
it wasn't being used, that was my point, and that's why I asked for the actual numbers, just to see.
Okay, it just jumped out at me.
Any other questions on public safety others? Then we have the long-term debt.
And that's been moved to other departments, or?
Primarily in the first department, general government. It's, Providence Water is considered a settlement payment,
This is in another,
so it's in Department 10 under general government. It's at the bottom.
that was in the first department that we talked about, and that's why Mr. May, I'm sure, was looking at that. Yes, this will be our 5th year.
The final payment is 7/15/2024. I just looked up our debt schedule. The final payment is 7/15/2024, well, 24.
Which is gonna be in
No, because what we did in this budget,
Right,
we increased the budget 35,000, I think it's 30, I have to look at it, because.
We've been paying extra.
We've been paying
We started off, our initial payment started at 175,000 for the first payment. What happens is every time the Federal Reserve increases the interest rate, so do we. So,
We've been increasing it.
we've been increasing the payment, so we increased to 190 in fiscal year 2018, so we could address the balloon payment that we would have in the final year. And this year we went up to 205, because the interest rate on this loan or settlement payment changed 3 times in the course of the last fiscal year. So it's gone up. When we started paying on this, it was at 3.5%, now it's at 5.5.
I know, I agree, Walter. Waffle, yes. Now I don't know which way to flip. Oh, very good, thank you. We're on to page 15, capital. So we have a few things there. School, well, starting with the clerk. No?
Finance.
Yeah, but I thought the clerk had,
For what?
for capital.
For what? We put it under finance, town clerk, townwide.
Okay,
Really, actually, I'm gonna change that title right now to townwide. Because
okay,
that's what it is, for the server.
for the server, okay. It says finance, so all right,
Actually, I'd rather it go under her, so that's where it's going. And I'll label it townwide.
there you go. So, the 20,000 is for a server for townwide, but it goes under the town clerk's, because Kelly said so. She did that magic wand. The assessor, tax assessor, she had originally requested 20,000, but was able to get it for 10,000, is that correct? And that's for a new camera system
And a new
and tangible cell system. So that's the 10,000 there. The police, it's 52,000, and that's 19,000 for a fingerprint machine that brings us up to modern times and
Correct.
into being in accordance to.
Compliance with the state.
Compliance. And then 33,000 for 2 new vehicles. Then we have animal control, there's nothing. Highway, 180,000. So that's the paving of roads in town. So that, Mr. Carey, we are looking at that. We also have 100,000 for equipment, and Kelly and Bob discussed this, and it's purchasing one vehicle now and putting monies aside.
It's $40,000 for a piece of apparatus. It's either the, Bob, I can remember which one, the chipper. And then the other 60 is going to be towards the first payment of a short-term lease for a larger truck or a mid-sized truck in its entirety. He's deciding which one he needs first.
Could I ask, the 180,000 for paving, how, in today's dollars, how much paving is there?
Not far.
It's been about
What
1
is it?
mile.
A mile.
A mile.
Anthony Road more than a mile.
That's why we're not doing it.
There you go.
I have a question about this. As it turns out, if we have a surplus in our public works budget at year end,
Mhm.
do we just take that money and throw it in the general fund, or do we apply it towards the next year's budget?
Are you talking about capital or operation?
Either both.
Capital,
Both.
I think, capital, correct me if I'm
Capital
wrong.
stays in capital.
Capital stays in capital, but he's
Operating,
earmarked,
yes.
he's earmarked monies that if he doesn't spend it on the equipment, he's earmarked that equipment money to go towards a vehicle which we would add to the next
Yeah,
capital.
how about the operation budget?
And the operational
It
budget,
goes to fund balance, it reverts to fund balance, based on the standards of accounting.
Say again?
It reverts to fund balance, all, like, it's like a profit or loss in the general fund, so it goes into fund balance. Anything in excess of in excess of 10%, however, is then reserved for capital for the future. That's also part of this budget when she's done speaking, that we'll talk about, that we were going to reserve the use of some of those capital reserves that are in fund balance, in the general fund we're gonna put it aside for, in case, because right now we've made no contingency for the fact that his grader is close to 30 years old, and the loader is on its way out, so both of them are at least $200,000 to replace. We haven't budgeted the money for it, so we're gonna set aside, capital reserves at the financial town meeting. I gotta talk to the solicitor about the best way to go about that, so that they can have that available in the, in case one of it breaks down, that way, he can, sometimes you can buy a used, you can buy used equipment, or you find a good deal, but the thing is, he doesn't have any money earmarked for it. So if you don't earmark any money for it, or how he would go about funding it, then there's no, he's never allowed to do anything about it. And unfortunately, the way the budgeting cycle goes, he'd have to basically ensure that he can get by in the next year and a half, for the most part, without having to replace either of those two items, and it's not likely. So we have about $900,000 in capital reserves at this point, about half which is in the capital project fund, and about half which is reserved fund balance in the general fund for excess over our 10% fund balance by the charter standards. So we were going to commit the use of $230,000 of that for the occurrence that, the occasion that one of those two pieces of equipment fails, or that he can, and also so that he can complete a bridge that was estimated a couple of years ago to cost about $80,000 to repair, and we only have about $55,000 set aside. So once he gets once we put that out for an RFP, and they get a value on that, then we'll have some of that money to fund the rest of that.
Walter, you have another question, I can tell.
Yes.
I noticed that there's no allocation in capital improvements for bridge repair. We have currently 2 bridges that are closed, and we have another one that you're familiar with, right down the street from you,
I know.
that needs to be redone.
Mm-hmm.
And we've not allocated any capital dollars for any of those.
Right. We know that. And that was a tough decision. We've been trying to figure out how we can do that. The Johnson Road is one that we're looking at to finish that off, and then looking to get monies at some point to have an engineer come out and look at the Central Pike Bridge and see what that would, and how long they would project for us to be able to keep using it.
There's one other bridge that nobody seems to talk about, and that's the one on Willoughby Young Road. Willoughby Young Road Bridge is not inspected by anybody. It's not big enough for the state to fall within the parameters of the state. So I would suggest to you that somebody ought to go out there and take a peek at it.
Okay. Thank you. He's nodding.
End of story.
Thanks.
Pleasure hearing Oak Hill Road. I just wonder, we don't share equipment anymore, or, I remember doing a sweeper and, we don't do that anymore with other towns, no.
No, Bob has looked into that.
Right.
Yeah, Bob has looked into that, and people aren't always willing to share.
I wasn't sure if we were doing that
No. So then the next.
If Walt's here, asked him to look 5 years out. So instead of having that huge payment for the student swing, to try to make it level. Gloucester really got hit this year. They're like $657,000 they're gonna pay, which is way astronomical compared to ours. So we've asked him to look at that. Huh?
Our middle school is only half full.
That's wrong.
That could be.
Our population overall has not grown, it's
No.
just a change.
Wasn't it half full when you built it?
There's a lot of discussion, Walter,
Thank you.
but the regional has been adopted. So there's no change to make there.
The bus is
Although I
already
do
on the
want to
gate.
say, we had the most people there, I think it was like 59.
Yeah.
Foster residents
Years.
showed up, that's the most it's been in years. So thank you for coming
Yeah.
out, everyone.
Year before last was
12,
18.
18,
It
Yeah,
was 18 of us.
but like 12 of us were canvassers and,
yeah, so,
yeah.
but,
I was.
We got it up to 59 this
Yeah.
year.
which was very good. I'm glad people came out and voted, and,
Oh,
yeah,
it passed.
it passed.
So, out our hands now.
So, any other questions on education? Okay, let's see if I can turn the page the right way.
If we skip over 42. The capital asset contributions.
Oh, so now we're on 17, which is expenditures. Does anyone have any questions on that? And I'm gonna let Kelly do that, if you have any questions.
So the capital, because Department 41 is funded by capital reserves or the capital project fund transfers, I exclude that from the total. So the total increase for the operating budget was $406,000, of which 93 and 100 and, of which 216,000 was for the schools directly. And 45 when we increased the contribution towards capital improvements, 45 for that. And the other town operations, 144,000 in total. was an increase in town operations, other than capital and school and education.
Okay, any questions on that? No? Moving on to revenues. Any questions?
Just have one, during the planning board workshop,
Yes.
a number was thrown out for the, where is it, police fines and fees, how much we realized from that. And I thought I heard the number 70,000.
That,
They're wrong.
that was one of the numbers that were thrown out, yes.
That's a work in progress.
Okay,
Well,
That-
so
70,000
basically that
was-
70,000 is not true.
It's true in 2016,
Right, in 2016, but I thought
where we had
for this year.
additional staff, all of our staffing was young, and they trained on by doing road work and details. So, that was our hope. It's decreased steadily since then.
Okay.
Yes. Question on the interest on investments. What are we getting right now?
Most of our funds are, that are available is basically just 10% of our fund balance, which is about $1.2 million, and that's earning, right now, less than 2% in the money market, less than that. And most of our funds are either checking or savings accounts or money markets. There's no interest to be made on money markets. So I can't help that. And honestly, we don't risk the town's funds. So, I mean, could we do bonds? Sure, if you know for sure that you're never gonna need the fund balance. But, and we don't risk the town's funds. I mean, I don't even think, I don't know of anybody who invests in money markets or anything mutual funds or anything like that. We're very limited in government as to what you can invest in.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you for your input and questions. We've marked down those questions that you did have. It helps us prepare. We are going to adopt the budget next Thursday. We're having a special meeting to adopt the budget, but the financial town meeting is May 5th?
I think it's actually May 7th.
May 7th. Thank you. So, moving on, Ms. Hors had requested that the various department heads, planning, DPW, finance, and police, give a oral presentation, if you will, for what's going on in their departments so that the public will know. This is to inform the council. There'll only be questions from the council, not from the audience. So beginning with Jennifer, our planning department head, if you would just come up and, it's very brief, no, and you're not getting graded on it.
Oh, yes, she is.
So, let's see, we've been doing a lot, the last couple of months. We looked at medical marijuana and recreational marijuana and the solar. I've also had the hearing for, Cohog Solar on, Route 101, and many people, many butters have come in and solicited, fielded questions from me, looking at the site plans. I also get fielded questions from the state. I had mentioned that the Rhode Island Commerce Corp was looking for natural spring waters.
So if anybody knows natural spring waters, maybe Walter does.
What are they looking for them for?
I actually don't know, but they.
It's commerce, and
Yeah,
looking
so it's
get our
probably
water
some
and sell it.
business, so I can contact
On the
them.
bottom of
Yes.
spring water?
But we thought about doing that with ours, right? We have the spring, we can't keep a well cover on, on the well head.
Right.
It blows off, that thing, it just runs
Just runs.
constantly
I can
all year.
contact them. I have the person's name. And also we had an economic development specialist come to the planning board, and I had done him to come in February. We also have a chart, I have a chart of all the subdivisions and zoning applications. There hasn't been any zoning meetings for like 6 months, but now I have 3 applications, and there's a few more people coming to talk with me about doing zoning, so that's my work.
You're on the upswing.
Yeah, there's I only have one for each of you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Jennifer.
So you can see.
Does anyone from the council have a question for Jennifer?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I would just say this, Jen. If you're overwhelmed, please take advantage of the offer that was publicly
Yes.
stated today.
Dump all your work on her, that's what I would do. After she
I didn't say that, so actually.
I'll say, I don't really know.
Yeah.
So I.
You wanted that in the past.
Yes, I have. Yes, Carol helps me out, and she does these charts. She also does the minutes, thank God.
Yeah.
Because that takes a lot of time.
And she likes it.
She likes
And
it.
she likes it.
She likes, I don't know if she likes your planning board minutes, but she likes mine.
I think they're
Okay, we'll move on to DPW, Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
All right, this is for the month of February, not March, February only. We had some opportunity to asphalt patch some of the roads, East Penley, Shippey Schoolhouse, Payne, King, Boss, and a few others. We had a kind of a problem on Maple Rock with this winter with the dirt roads freezing and unfreezing and freezing. We had a situation up there that we had to bring some stone up to fix. We've been fortunate with any large storms this year, thank God, and but you'd be amazed how much time goes into these little snow to ice to rain to ice, you know, and so we did sand and used a lot of material. We had some culvert pipes clogged. There's one on East Killeen, there's a little pond near 101, and that backed up the pond, overflowed over the road. We had one on South Killeen here, right, that by Windsor, that blocked, and we had to deal with that, and then it overflowed and caused a big ice dam. Under buildings and grounds, basically, well, it's hard to believe, but we did clean the town hall. Ben Eddie, Woody Loudon, we do every week. We also at least once a month wax the floors at Woody Loudon. And we every week pick up the trash and recyclables from the police, and we provide them with the supplies that they need. Under miscellaneous, we had a tree on Pontiac Road that I've never seen. It had to be 2.5, 3 feet diameter, and it split from the ground up about, I mean, you walk right through the center of the tree. So,
From the ground up?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, right in the
Lighted?
center. No, I don't know. Usually you'll see the lightning, you know, burn.
The marks.
And there's some still out there, so they may go out there and look at it.
I'll tell my husband.
Believe
In
you.
my spare time. I'll tell my husband, he'll let me go also.
I actually have pictures too, but we did have Malik come in and remove that tree. We did another tree on East Killeen that we were able to handle ourselves. At the police station, we installed a fire door that leads upstairs, which is part of the fire marshal. And we did upgrade some of the smoke alarms that had to be done. And that's an ongoing project there.
And the light is fixed, right?
Yes, it is.
Good. Thank you.
And we just got working on the trucks, right at them, well, I know this is February's report, but we have all the trucks up and running as of this moment. Now we're just trying to work on reliability.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
that's,
And I must say, I will interject here and say that Norm Shippey has been
Yes.
great.
No,
Yes.
he's doing the mechanic.
He's
work
doing
right
the
now.
mechanical
The
work.
money he has saved the town.
Yeah,
He's only working part-time.
Yeah, but he was.
He's been-
Was-
Is that Chip Shippey's son?
No.
No,
That's
no relation?
No, yeah, maybe his brother.
Probably.
60 something.
yeah.
Oh, okay, then probably his brother.
So, but been very helpful, so just wanted that out there.
I know this isn't February's report, but just so you guys are aware, and the grader is out starting Monday, so,
If we get any phone calls, it's out.
yeah, it's out, we're on chance right now.
Great. Thank you.
Jake's is really in need of it.
Is this Mr. Shippey, is he part-time?
Yes,
Well, that's great, I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, no,
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to excuse
Thanks,
Jennifer
Bob.
and Bob. They don't have to
Unless, of
stick
course,
around.
you want to go.
If you really wanna hang out.
Yeah, right. You can.
Here's the gun shop.
Finance.
Yankee Road comes out.
As I've spent more, it's about as much time as I have with my family with all of you.
Yes.
I think you're pretty aware of what I said. I spent a lot of time on the budget, and I'm meeting your auditor or preparing for things that they need more and more.
Could I ask people to
No, not.
quiet down, please? Finance is helping us.
Just showing them a big giant pothole.
Big giant, oh,
Where there is one.
good. Where there is one. Good.
So, we've been working a lot with the auditor and preparing for it. It seems like every year the data that we have to provide is just more and more. It increases. But this municipal transparency portal that I don't think anybody ever goes on unless you're trying to do some sort of public request for information. It's just a lot of work involved. And this is the final push and the final procedure that we have to do to get past that whole combination and the changeover of our accounting systems. It's the final year where we combine the two systems and completely revitalize our charter accounts. This budget cycle should be the last year that impacts this too. So hopefully going forward, everything is a lot easier because we won't be trying to translate information that was reported in one way in a different way. We have everything's like mapped to different accounts and it makes it really difficult. Don't put that on me. Like, listen, I cannot afford the pounds. So it makes it just more difficult to map. So after this procedure, the audit is done and this budget is finalized, that should be the last remaining piece of this difficult transition for
It
our
has been
accounting system.
extremely.
It has been so much more
Yes,
difficult
time
made by the changing of our chart of accounts. If we didn't change our account structure, it wouldn't have been as difficult. Everything else would have stayed the same, we just would have had new procedures. But by changing the way we reported all of our departments and all of our budgets, it's gonna make reporting to the state easier because we changed our reporting structure to comply with the state reporting requirements. But it has not made our budget preparation or our audit report preparation or our audit procedures any easier. They have had to audit two systems, and actually, we probably have a 30-page adjustment to transfer our account balances as of December 31st, 2017 to 2018. That has to all be audited. It's been a tremendous amount of time and effort, so hopefully that ends that. And we're also working on a very large public request for information that I received by my friend, Justin Cat. So, for personnel related, I talked to Joanna about what was required and what wasn't, so that pretty much sums it up. And Nancy, our tax collector, has actually scheduled the next tax sale will be sometime in June. She sent out a lot of delinquent notices regarding that, and she's been busy trying to help people work through this whole situation with the tax sale. It's been great.
Police chief.
Few things I want to touch on.
Oh, you get extra points, another handout. Wow, Jennifer had a handout.
I had a budget.
Gonna have to.
Yeah, yours was multiple pages.
Thank you. So you can.
Just the activity, touch base, and I'll show up every morning, sorry. Touch base on some of the things that police department's doing, but first, I did what Bob did, went from February to March. We've had 12 arrests, 64 citations, 62 incident reports, 24 accident reports. We've issued 7 arrest warrants, and we've had 2,191 calls for service since February 1st, so the guys have been busy. Also, some other positive notes, we had a tour given for 25 Cub Scouts. The kids were showing how night vision goggles work, what riot shields are like. They were showing how fingerprints are developed. We let them try out the fingerprint machine, got to take pretend mug shots, and I'll tell you, the children and the parents were thrilled. They had a great time, so I thought that was a good thing. Wanted to mention a couple other things. On April 27th, I don't know if anybody saw the Foster Home Journal. I'm going to be, myself and Ray Peters are going to be representing Foster in a shooting competition. It's the first annual Cops Cup, comprised of 2-man teams from all the police departments throughout Rhode Island. The winner gets...
How are our chances?
I'm going to try to win. What are my chances? I'll give my best shot, you know. So if you win, you get $2,500. It goes to the town and in charity that the town, you know, wishes to contribute to.
Where is that taking place?
Elite Gun Range in South Kingston. So it's like
I didn't know.
state police are involved in it too, as well as all the other local cities and towns.
Can the town be considered a charity case?
Yes.
On May 14th, Carol Morrow had reached out to me, so I'm going to be sitting with the postal inspector at the North Foster Baptist Church. We're going to be speaking to the elderly in regards to scams that are out there, so I'll be there on May 14th. And lastly, on May 31st, I am running in the torch run to benefit Special Olympics. So we're going to have Foster for that. And, it's a 13-mile leg, but I'm practicing, so.
My husband's running 14 Saturdays.
Is he really? Well, I'm only up to like 4 miles right now. I'm ready the 31st. I ran the other day, but I'm ready.
Well, good luck, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
You cannot leave, you're still.
I know.
You're still. You cannot leave, you're still up.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Next, under new business, we have the Preservation Society Perpetual Care Cemetery proposal. Mr. Robinson sent me an email. Did I pass it to someone or?
You gave me this, no, I think I have the Carol Moreau email.
Yeah,
I don't believe I have that.
Okay, thank you. So, Ed is here, and other members of the Preservation Society are here. And it's something that was discussed last year in regards to the perpetual care cemeteries. So Ed, do you want to?
Well, we have a couple of problems. And the first one being that the line item for care on the perpetual cemeteries have been removed from the budget as a budgetary constraint. And that in itself is a problem, because there's not, we had delved into the principle, which was done in an error. It was, you know, to me it was totally just, we didn't know.
Right.
And unfortunately, we've spent probably $14,000 of what should have been there. Now, that's gotta be put back at some point, but I'm not raising the flag and saying it's gonna be done today. But these cemeteries can't go year after year without care, because these bullbriars grow up, bushes grow up, and once that happens, it's gonna take days to clean a cemetery, instead of just going in and cutting, you know, clipping these little growths. So that's why I wanted the money put back in as a line item. It's not gonna be enough to do all 36 cemeteries, but it can do the ones that need it. Some of the big cemeteries, are actually being taken care of in other ways. Hopkins Mills pays for their own upkeep. They do have some perpetual care lots in there, but as long as they're mowing it, I'm not complaining. And there is no way that we could afford to pay to mow that. Spears Cemetery is another one. John Neal was paying $1,600 every time he had it mowed. That's more than we got to play with. Ben Phillips is mowing Phillips Cemetery, and they're the biggest contributor to the perpetual care fund. So I've got a list of all of the cemeteries. I know which ones are being cared for, and I'm interested in trying to get at some of the little ones that either I can't get a volunteer for. I mean, I'll try to juggle this, it's not our problem, but we're a town, we do what we can, and I'm willing to do what I can. The other thing is, we have to get a better return on our money, and I know what Kelly's saying over there, but I contacted the Rhode Island Foundation. Now, Borders Farm has $1 million endowment that Charlie Borders left, and they guarantee a 4.5% return. And they have millions, I mean hundreds of millions invested. Now, if they have what you're getting right now, which is an uptick in interest rates, they take the increase and they split it between a return and adding to the endowment. So, you have to be a 501c3 in order to get an endowment with them. They couldn't sell it to the town. My offer to the town was, give it to preservation to put into an endowment for you. We get a check every December, and you get the check. And it said 4.5%, you're gonna get $1,500. You'll never get that out of the bank. And this money is, to me, it's safer than the bank, because I've seen these credit unions and banks fold in this state. I wouldn't bet my life on them. So, that becomes a problem because you have to put an endowment in $10,000 increments. Right now, you've got $17,000. You gotta get up over 30. And you could put 10,000 in and wait until the 7 stretch to another 10. Or somehow you could find a way to get up over 30, which is what we owe to that account. I don't know if you wanna go that way, and it doesn't have to be preservation. There are other 501c3 entities in the town.
I'm not sure about the legalities of taking town monies and
It's not town money. It's not town money.
the perpetual.
The town is a fiduciary.
It's controlled for the perpetual care cemetery, the funds.
It's a
Yeah, I
fund in
mean-
the town.
That money you could put in, but I think what he's talking about is putting money back in that was inadvertently used. That would be taxpayer money. I haven't looked at the fact whether that.
It's not taxpayer money. The town misused money that was in a trust fund
Right.
that by law could not be touched.
But now you're asking the taxpayers today to reimburse what was mistakenly used.
And we didn't misuse it, we used it to mow the lawns, but we didn't use the interest only. That's what we were supposed to use,
That-
not the.
No, you're right.
So
I'm
we
not,
didn't
I'm not finding
misuse.
fault with the town here.
No, I
And
know, but I just want to
It stretches over
clarify, we did
multiple
not use.
councils. But do not try to make the case that I'm talking about town money. That money was put in there by people who had families buried in those lots.
But what you're asking, right, but what you're asking the town to do, and I'm only just throwing this out, I'm not arguing with you.
Yeah.
Is that now you're asking taxpayers in 2019 to replace money that was put in over the years and mistakenly the corpus, the principle was used. That's a question that I'll have to research. And secondly, I think that's to come to a financial town meeting, because you have to ask the taxpayers whether they wanna do that.
Well, then call the city of Pawtucket, because they are repaying what they spend.
Yeah, but I don't really trust the city of Pawtucket, so.
Neither do I, but they're a whole lot bigger than we
So
are.
any standard of what should be done in this state. But that's my own opinion.
So,
So what do we, I'm not gonna ask you to make a decision on it tonight. But the fact is that you get one disgruntled taxpayer who calls the Rhode Island Historic Cemetery Commission and says, I put money in here to take care of my mother's grave, it's covered with briars, they spent the money, what are you gonna do? And the state's gonna say, Foster, geez, they're Republicans, right? Let's take them to the woodshed.
I don't think we're the only, because when this all came through, I called around to various cities and towns to find out what they did. Many of them didn't even know what a perpetual care cemetery was,
Well,
even though they have them on their books.
but Situate has a $13,000 a year line item. They did away with the cemetery fund and they paid for it out of the line item. And I'm not telling you that you need to do that, but that only takes care of 13 cemeteries out of 150. In Gloucester, if my wife goes over and puts soil down because some of the graves are sunk, she sends a bill in, the town council approves it, and they pay her out of the cemetery fund. So there is no one size fits all. Every town does what works for them. I'm trying to find us a way out where we can make the best interest on this and get out from under a bad situation.
How long, or over how many years did that $12,000 or $14,000 get spent?
Well, if you went back to, I think it was it 2009, Kelly, when they pulled $59,000 out of that?
It was years ago, and when I first started, I remember that was one of the questions I asked them, is that they were spending money, quite a bit of money to care for the cemeteries, and I remember saying that after the second year of being here, that if we didn't start making, they pulled quite a bit out, yes. If they didn't start finding another revenue source, that they were gonna fully deplete that fund within a few years. So we let it go for another year because it was run at the town clerk's area, they would hire somebody to do it. And then after that, we brought it up at a council meeting, and I said something at that point, you were depleting this fund, and at that point, I think we stopped, and then we started budgeting another source. We are now up to like 19 change, almost $20,000 in that fund. I just looked it up on the system. Because at one point, we actually funded more than we paid for the mowing, so that helped to increase the fund balance of that. So
How much-
close to 20.
How much does that
I
create
think
on
we're
interest?
supposed to, from a principal standpoint, I think we're supposed to have about $100, not yet.
A year?
Yeah. So I think.
Even when it was at 30,000, is that?
No,
how much
at
you got?
30, that's the problem. They were earning about $200 or $200 a year, and they were spending $5,000.
Right.
So at some point, they had money come in there from other sources because they had money. Oh, you know what it is? I know what happened. They had a boatload of money because they owed the general fund. They hadn't paid the general fund for something like 20 years for all the times that the general fund paid for the mowing. So all that did was increase the liability from that fund to the general fund. So they were earning more interest, but because the money belonged in the general fund. So the general fund was paying for the mowing and then setting up a receivable from that fund.
So,
That fund never liquidated that receivable, so they had this huge balance. That's the $60,000 that you're talking about, that
Right.
came from that fund to that fund. We had to pay it back because it was a liability to the town.
So it really was not sustainable at all. I mean, if you're getting
Oh, anything
$200,
that with the word, in my opinion, which Mark could, clarify, but anything with the word perpetual in it,
yeah, right,
that includes a payment that you have to make, is probably not sustainable. Because
right.
perpetual really does mean
It's forever.
unending.
So
Well-
by taking
So-
all that money, the cemeteries actually got taken care of many more years than they would have.
They should have
had we-
stopped long before
Okay.
they did. And
All right.
left that principal balance, but not, I'm not saying stop. That's a theory that you have to determine whether or not you wanna fund it with the general fund. But the point is, they didn't have the money long before they stopped paying for it.
Right.
That's how the
What would
money got
that do
depleted.
legally? Because it does say we can only use the interest. So,
You wouldn't be able to do
we
anything.
We
wouldn't
wouldn't
be
do
able to do
anything,
it.
so you're
So
not,
where would that leave us legally in that,
Yeah.
okay, we're supposed to perpetually care for these cemeteries?
Right.
If it's not sustainable.
Yeah, it's not sustainable, and I think you would probably be okay in court because of the problem is, you guys talked about it last year or the year before, was the idea that then you gotta do all the cemeteries in town, right? Not just the ones.
No.
You would have,
No,
no, right,
it's
you know what I'm saying, what I'm
it's
talking about,
taxpayers'
it's
money.
taxpayer money, because if you're gonna say that, so what you're saying is that people who paid $50 or $10 in, 1900, and so today you have, that money is not sustainable anymore, so now you want the taxpayers to kind of pick up the slack just for those perpetual care things.
I didn't ask that.
I'm saying that's what.
I'm saying just restore the fund, and we'll worry about how to do it, but you've got the biggest
You have to restore that at
cemeteries.
the financial town meeting, because that's a taxpayer decision.
It's not.
Yes, it is, because that's a mistake that was made by that group, and now you're asking taxpayers today to refund that money.
What was the principal balance in that? Was it 31,000?
$200 to
Right.
especially, and in 1892, $200 was a lot of money.
Right, but it's not anymore, because it costs so much money to, I mean, every town, we have the same argument, and I know it's a hot button argument, because the same problem, these things are running out of money. I'm just telling you my opinion, I'm not telling you
I'm
one way or
telling
the other.
you that there are 36 cemeteries that have perpetual care lots in them, 36, out of 154. So we're not talking about all the cemeteries. And we're saying that the biggest cemeteries are managing to take care of themselves. They're still selling lots.
Okay, here's the example Mark's trying to make.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna mow your perpetual cemeteries, and I'm gonna use taxpayer money.
Oh,
I want my lawn mowed.
no, it's coming out of the perpetual care. I'm saying that
It's not, because that money's already spent.
it's spent illegally. If I took $10 out
I
of
didn't
your
do
pocket
it.
to buy coffee,
But they spent it.
and what I'm saying is it was not ours to spend, and it was spent, but it's gotta be put back. If you take $10 from me without asking me, aren't you gonna give it back, or are you gonna say, oh, no, it's gone, it's not my problem?
I get your point, but you gotta understand our point too.
Joe, you have a question?
Yeah, I don't have a question. I know, I've seen this whole thing for years, and the problem is the town spent money they weren't supposed to spend. They have an obligation to these people to restore it. However it happened, whoever's mistake it was, over many, many years. But these people, if the fund balance is supposed to be 30, whatever, I don't have any idea. If it's 30,000, it's always been thrown around 31,000. If the principal balance was spent, then it was illegal for the town to do it, whether it was inadvertent or not. They have an obligation to at least restore that somehow. I mean, as far as being able to pay with the interest, okay, that's not gonna happen, and we all realize that, because there's not enough interest, but we never had, we never were allowed to spend that money, and we did, and it's not your fault, because it probably happened years before you people were even involved in the town, but it happened. And the town has an obligation to restore the funds.
You heard Kelly say
I
that
heard
there
it
was
all.
years that the town paid it.
The balance isn't there.
Yeah, but the town took $59,000 out, they repaid themselves.
Right.
That's 6 to an even. The town owes the fund owes the town nothing.
So my question, and I had brought this up before, was that, so say we did restore it, say, okay, now does that money just sit there forever knowing that you're never going to have that money?
Well,
Wouldn't it, ethically speaking, be more prudent or fairer to actually use that money to care for it as long as you can? I don't know, like, so yes, we restore it, and then that 30,000 sits there forever until you earn $2,000 so someone will go and mow.
Well, I
Which is
think-
10 years.
I think if you put it in there, then I would go with his recommendation of you take a portion of it. Now, if it's gonna, maybe you can transfer it at that point to the Preservation Society, or somewhat of it, and let them then invest it in the Rhode Island Foundation. Because what's gonna happen, you're gonna use the money up. And then you're gonna be in the same boat again, you're gonna have to, and so the only, and let me say, and I don't care one way or the other, I'm just throwing out ideas because, I guess, how I think now. But, so what prevents, like, Jimmy Jones coming from down the road and he's saying, okay, this town made a mistake and now you're replacing the money, and then that money gets used up and then they want more money, and he says, okay, I want something, I want this grade site, also done. That's when you'll see lawsuits come
But he
here.
didn't pay for
No,
perpetual care.
Doesn't matter, but now you're using taxpayer money. So that's gonna be a legal question in court. I don't know the answer to that, but if you have these people, this is a litigious town, and I've seen it now in my 3 years. That I could see someone doing it, even if they're just gonna bust balls, because they're gonna think, well, why should these, even though it's perpetual, they're gonna think $200 in 1890 could be 20,000 today, but it just doesn't.
But the
add up.
town used private money. And
To
if the
care
town
for
used
itself.
private money, they should restore the private money.
And so my recommendation, we could
For
put it on
the fund itself.
Right.
So that's where you're losing the point, because they didn't use it and do something for the town. So to replenish that money using the town means at that point in time, that they're using town's money to reimburse
Because they
this
use it,
fund.
they use
They
it.
use it
They
to mow
didn't
the
use the
cemetery.
funds for the town's purposes, they used the fund for the
To maintain
cemetery.
the
So
cemetery.
even though they did dip below the principal balance, any replenishing of that is in fact taxpayer dollars. That's what you're
Talking
doing.
about mismanagement, gross
Yeah.
mismanagement, that's the bottom
I
line.
don't, well,
Yeah, but that was a long
I don't know
time
about that,
That's the
yeah.
bottom line, it's gross
Yeah,
mismanagement.
they were spending, they haven't received, they get less than $200 a year and spend $7,000. You can't spend $7,000 to mow year after year. I mean, you just can't do it. There were years that they spent $5,000. You can't spend $5,000 on a fund that had a principal balance of 30. So at some point, something happened to inflate that fund, either, because where did they actually have $60,000 or $70,000 in cash when they had a principal balance? Even in the most lucrative interest-bearing days, you wouldn't have had a balance of 60
No,
or 70,000.
you're starting from the wrong point, Kelly. You have to start from the point which was before people got $15 an hour to flip a hamburger. There were people who would go out and clean a cemetery for $10 and figured that they made out. It was a depression, or people selling donuts on the corner. So
Oh, no, I'm not talking
So
about
what's
that.
happened is that you've changed, the cost of doing business has changed. The money didn't. There was no way the money was gonna keep up with salaries. So what I'm saying is, let's be smart about this. We've got 6 big cemeteries that are managing to get by, one way or another. So that leaves 30, but these 30 may be 30 by 40 foot inside a stone wall. So somebody's gotta go in with loppers, cut the brush to get it down. You don't have to seed it, you don't have to mow it, you don't have to plant flowers, but you've gotta keep it from getting overgrown because the town told somebody, if you give me your money, I'll keep your cemetery clean. It was an agreement between gentlemen and neighbors. And now all of a sudden, it's inconvenient because over time, we've spent money that wasn't ours, and now we got caught with our hand in the cookie jar. Time to put it back, and I'm amenable to helping the town in whatever way I can. And I would carry it as far as trying to get volunteers to do some of these.
And I appreciate that part of it, but I'm also hearing, I've been quiet on you
Yeah.
and listening to this. We use monies from the perpetual care fund to care for the cemeteries. We mowed, we used beyond the interest. We went into the principal and used that.
Yeah.
So to mow the lawns, to mow the cemeteries. So now we have to replace that money, but we're not gonna be able to maintain those cemeteries because we don't have enough interest to maintain those
You
cemeteries.
do if the Rhode Island Foundation.
If we go, right,
Right.
if we go that way, but replacing the monies, we're replacing the monies that we spent to maintain the cemeteries,
Yeah,
which,
Chasing.
okay, so,
yeah, it's kinda,
so here is the state law.
yeah,
And
you
it's
gave me a copy of it, and I gave everyone a copy of it.
Purpose of perpetual care funds. The corpus or principle of perpetual care funds shall be maintained intact and shall not be expended to pay for perpetual care or any other expenses, but the income and other earnings on the corpus or principle of perpetual care funds may be so expended.
Yes,
That's the law.
yes.
So,
And I'm not disputing that, I understand that, but it's not maintainable. I mean, if we're only getting $200.
Well, I think he's saying,
then-
are you saying, I think he's saying if we had $30,000,
With the-
that he would invest at 4%. So 10% of 30,000 is 3, so it'd be $1,200 at 4%, correct? And with $1,200, he's saying that they would try to make it work. Am I
Right.
summing
That-
this?
At
that's-
least once a year to
exactly-
keep the brush down. The bottom line is, no matter what went on before, the position we're in is that these cemeteries are growing up. And, you know, I've been part of the cemetery scouting thing. You have trees, and it doesn't take long for a tree to grow up from a grave and topple the stone, and it's
And no one's
basically
disputing
obliterated.
that. No one's
No,
disputing
no,
that.
I understand that, but, so, you know, I know it gets down to the right thing to do. These people put money in, and you said there was even somebody who put $5,000.
yeah.
$5,000 in at some point. And so we have two ways to go. We can fund it from taxpayer money, as Situate does, a line item, or we can reestablish the 30,000, and then the preservation takes over getting the interest and paying it. Those two ways, at least they get mowed once a year, and hopefully we can keep the brush down.
But the
Or you could-
30,000
or you
has to
could
come
assume-
from the taxpayers' money regardless.
Or you could assume, to cut to the chase, you could assume that $30,000 would earn interest of $1,200, which is aggressive, and fund the $1,200 and not the $12,000. Are you following me like that? And that makes everybody happy.
Lynn, I want them taken care of, I do, but what I'm hearing
What do you
is
think, did you hear
that
that?
any money that we give back is taxpayers' money, and once we do that, then everybody has a right to some portion of it. That's what I'm hearing out of it. Even though it's paying back a debt that shouldn't have happened, erroneously happened, it wasn't malicious, it happened, that's the way they took care of it. But we're taking money from this budget and putting it in that, it's still taxpayers' money, so that gives them the right to
Say, hey, mine too.
I wanted it to be kept funded. I voted against this being taken out. I still want it to be kept funded.
Put it back in, put a
Yeah.
line back in.
That's fine with me if we put a line item in, but to pay it into, because then it's the line item, and then it takes care of what we're saying it's taking care of.
But
You
once
don't know
you-
that.
Once you make the fund whole,
Underfunded.
you never hear it again. I mean, it's gone.
I
So-
totally get what you're saying, Mr.
Budget
Robinson,
that
I
in, call
totally
it
get
lost
that.
interest, and end it.
What's that, say that?
Except
It's
that,
underfunded by $11,000. 4% of $11,000 is a few $100s. Put a line item in your budget that says lost interest on perpetual care fund due to such and such a thing, and there you go. It's fully, you haven't lost the interest that you would have gained on that
It wouldn't
principal
even
value.
also the budget.
It's not funding the actual mowing, it's replenishing the interest that it's not earning for various reasons. And
Well,
What do you think of that?
as you said, Ms. Robinson, it's not something we're gonna be able to
I'm
solve.
always trying to, I think
You're
I'm
gonna be
myself.
chasing a floating interest rate.
I'm
Because
just
what
trying
you're-
to come up
what
with
you're-
something.
What you're avoiding by doing that is the fact that the Rhode Island Foundation is always going to be increasing interest as interest rates float. And so to match what that fund would be returning is going to be difficult. Now, I'm saying, if you pay to mow, now Ken Batty, that 2,500, I think, was for Ken Batty to mow once.
No,
No, you
no,
don't.
he was mowing 4 times.
Twice.
Oh, the 25 was
It was
twice.
supposed to be.
It was twice.
Well, that's why I asked to put the 2,500 in.
But,
But then this restoring the fund is a separate issue, because that has to be done. I mean, that's gotta be done.
I think that's gonna be approved by the taxpayers.
I'm just trying to find a
If
compromise.
they wanna approve, that's fine, but I mean, that's gonna go on.
That interest and the restoration of the interest was my compromise to try to make everybody, because in all honesty, what is the legal issue? Like, you're right, they gave the town of Foster this money to act as their guardian. And what right do we have then to sign over our money to a 501c3 so that they can invest it for us and then give us back is that within our
I
right?
think there's two different.
So there's two different
things.
issues. So
Restoring
that's
the
the only way
fund.
you would get the higher interest rate.
Right, you have to assign it to them. Well,
Right,
unfortunately,
which-
them. Well, I mean,
What's
I
the
guess-
legality of giving the money that was
I guess-
earmarked for a
I guess
reason?
the argument could be made is
So I don't
that,
know.
I mean, it's, first of all, I mean, it's right, it's archaic and everything, but the argument could be made that that's the only, and it could probably be held up in a court, but that's the only way you're gonna make this project work, is that some of that money's gotta go to the Rhode Island Foundation to get a better interest rate. And that's, you know, I mean, and, you know, they're obviously very reputable, they're not gonna go under, they're not gonna steal it. And then there's gotta be an agreement between the Preservation Society, you guys, I guess, and the town, that you're gonna give the check over every December.
Well, beyond that, in our bylaws, if we were to go defunct tomorrow, everything that we have goes to the town.
Okay. So I guess, I mean, that would be, and then.
We almost have 20,000.
So, and that's
So we
probably.
gave the 20,
Yeah.
we're short 10 or 11, calculate the same percent of interest that they would be losing, budget that as lost interest, not as like a replenishment of whatever. You've then in fact made the fund whole in theory, and you can't say that you're using taxpayer dollars to mow the whatever, you're really correcting an error by funding them, so that they're not being penalized for that lost income. You're making them whole to operate. I understand exactly what you're saying, but work with the compromise here. So I'm just trying to figure out,
Is that
so
something that would be in the budget every year?
it would have to be, it would be called like replenishment of interest or whatever. It would be calculated at 10 or 11,000, which that's the principal balance, times 4%, which you're talking about not a lot of money.
Right.
So instead of 4,000 to mow, instead of 2,000 to mow, it would be a few $100s, or, right, to make their interest whole. Give them the 20 and do your legalese in the background to make that work. Would at that point, it satisfy everybody's, other than that, I don't know what else to say. We don't have $12,000 to replenish that
I'm
fund.
not, and I
In
never
this
said
budget.
that, I
I
never said
know.
that it had to be paid in one fell swoop either.
I know,
I
but
said,
we have a
to,
balanced
we've gotta
budget.
make
Would that be a
It's just
compromise
like
for you?
yours every year, it's, you know, our budget.
so what do you think about that?
I mean, I think that's fine, because all you're doing is replacing interest on money
Right,
that was inadvertently
exactly.
spent.
And it cannot be construed as using
It doesn't matter
taxpayer
to you guys,
dollars to mow
because
lawns.
it's still money. All your concern is that the money be replenished, doesn't matter what it's for.
Right, I don't wanna be the guy that's holding the checkbook either. No, I'm telling you, if we're getting the interest, it's gonna be one check from them in December, and I'm giving it to you. I'm only trying to find a way to get you the best rate that I can.
We understand that. We-
I think that's great, and then honestly, like 4% of $11,440 for, right? Can we just do that?
Well,
And
we're-
call it something, and then would that satisfy everybody's?
It have to be in the budget?
Yeah, well, where would you come up with $400? I don't
I
know,
think
my
we-
own
I
check,
think we
so
should.
yes, it would have to be.
Well, that's, no, I'm
As a
saying,
line
so,
item, that would probably go, it would probably be again in Sue.
There you go.
General government, general government.
and
it would
like
be-
Sue likes that, we're good.
It would be called, or we would show it as a transfer of say 450 rounded up for, to replenish the interest that was, right?
Yeah.
That lost interest, and it'd be a transfer into that fund for that purpose.
I think that's a good compromise.
So how much money does it end up per year?
Well, then it would be considered, we're talking about an average of 4% of $31,000.
Okay.
1,200, 1,240. That's it, I mean, that, the problem is, that, they were earning less than that, and spending $7,000 for years and years. And that was when DPW wasn't doing it. That wasn't like them charging DPW's salaries or anything like that, that was actual outside sources.
Well, that was because no one
They were
actually,
paying for gas for people's mower.
DPW wasn't doing it, Marshall Spalding was doing it. He was the sexton of the cemeteries in the town.
We
So
actually
I'm just
have
saying,
cemetery bills,
get it to
too.
a point where it's 6 to an even. We're trying to get volunteers to do these things. I had a guy in yesterday who works for Brown University and was interested in helping out with the cemetery. So we'll do what we can, but I want the town to be in a situation where
Well, I
that.
think Kelly just came up with a compromise.
But dude, I don't want part of the compromise as far as I'm concerned. I have no dog in this fight, all right? I'm just trying to sit here as a citizen and say, all right, what can we do to get out of trouble?
So Kelly gave us a thought, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, no, I mean, it's not my decision to make.
No,
I just want you guys to be aware, because at some point, that's gonna come and bite the town. It's gonna be just like the damn Providence Water Supply Board. Whatever we save here, we could wind up 10 years down the road in a friggin' legal fight.
Well,
It
this
doesn't
would be
make
a
sense.
start, would that be okay? This would be a start in that direction.
Well, what are we saying? We're going to get $20,000 and I get
Invest.
There's
two.
19,760.
Yeah, but I have to, I've gotta do the endowment, $10,000.
I know, so we would have to bump whatever that is today, because this is as of June 30th,
Yeah.
whatever that is as of today, we would budget the difference, the few $100s for the difference, and then we would budget for a percentage of, let's say, 4%, $450 every year, that we would use as an expense to help fund the mowing.
Well,
And then
they-
whatever,
they're
we
gonna-
would add that to your check and combine that's what we would spend on the cemetery fund.
Let's put it in a way that makes sense then. They're gonna pay me, off the bat, they're gonna pay 4.5%. So I'm gonna get a check for $900 in December, and I'm gonna give it to the council. You're gonna match half of that, because you gotta get up to the 30,000.
Right.
So if I'm getting a check for $450 per $10,000 increment, you're gonna put $450. If the interest rate goes up and I get a check for $600 per 10,000 increment, you're gonna put in $600. You're gonna match the interest that would have been earned by that account. That's what we're saying.
So we'll do
Whatever
a
the
third,
interest rate
because you're
goes to.
2/3 of it and we're a third, so whatever you're getting will, right,
Right?
yeah.
So it's whatever the interest rate flows to. I mean, I'm not,
I don't care, yep, it's just like the Providence, it's like the Providence Water Supply, every time the interest rate changes, we change it. And you're not talking a lot of money.
No.
So we find the $50 that we budget one time.
So we're adopting the budget next Thursday. We'll give Kelly yet another, and we'll go from there.
Kelly, is that interest, is it gonna be budgeted for like 20 years until it's a $10,000?
No, because you don't
realized?
understand,
Okay,
they're not
yeah.
considering this a replenishment of,
All right.
this is
That was
almost
just
a
my
do
question.
no harm.
it's a
Right?
placeholder.
This is a do no harm, plan. So in other words, that 30,000 could never go anywhere. It would always be 30,000 and you could
Right.
never ever use it. So what is the harm that you have done, that you have caused by spending that money now? You've lost the interest.
Right.
And the ability to now use that interest, earn it, and use it for the plan. If you fund that, you've
Makes it
now
square.
created, everything is now equal. You have no longer created a harmful situation.
I think that's
So
a
it's
fair
a
statement.
do no harm kind of thing.
That's a good point.
Walter,
I got 2 questions.
yes.
Has anybody ever investigated to find out what the hell happened to that money in the first place? What evidence do you
Kelly's
have
been down that
for
road.
the
I've been down
expenditure?
that road and it's an ugly bumpy road.
Okay.
And none of those people are here anymore, and why would we do it? And they didn't know, nobody knew. It took me 2 years to catch up
So
to
there's
it.
no evidence.
I didn't know
There's no
either
evidence.
that you
No
couldn't
evidence.
spend
The
the.
second
Oh, the
thing
towns
is,
didn't know, I don't think.
No.
No,
I don't think
Nobody knew.
we could even find an agreement.
my second point is that we're all sitting here agreeing on a maybe, a definite maybe.
yep,
And what's to guarantee 10 years from now, we're not gonna be stepping in the same muck
I could
that
die
we're
tomorrow.
stepping in right
I
now?
don't know,
we
like,
can't.
That's
You
my
can't.
point.
There's no guarantee.
Right.
There's no guarantee.
You've gotta make a guarantee for
Yeah, I
perpetual
know.
care,
It's just,
because
you know,
perpetual is just that.
I mean, this is this council, and all you do is a line item.
Right.
and to be honest with you, it's a line item for about $400. If we have to cut $400 from our budget, we have bigger problems than the interest on your cemetery fund. Let's go with that. So I think that if the theory is, and that we can show and we carry, because their intent was never to create a harmful situation, it was just not to take $10,000 or $12,000, or even $4 or $5 from the general fund every year. So $400 or $500 is really, I mean, I think it's explainable each and every year, and as long as, there'll always be somebody left over.
Yeah.
We all, you know, we're not all going away at the same time, so.
We're trying to do the best we can.
No, I understand.
No, I was talking to Mr. May.
Oh,
We're trying to do the best we
I
can.
understand that.
If they want their 10,000 replenished that they can never touch again, just to have it, so they have that total 30,000, can you give them that 400 of the interest, and they do what they want with it, they can replenish it, they can spend it on mowing,
No,
or
it's
no.
not purity, apples and oranges.
You can't, they can't take it and put it into their thing.
No.
No, and it's not their thing,
not
it's
their
still
thing.
our problem and our fund. They're just investing the money for us.
It's stable.
Yes.
Right.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Of the, what was it, like 2,500 was in there the last time around?
So we budgeted,
So-
it started at about 4,000 and then it got,
change,
then
yeah.
cut it in half.
Do you know the amount of cemeteries or plots that are supposed to be, supposed to have been done?
I have a list of it.
So there's 30 of them, it's 40,
There's-
50,
oh, there's
100
There's more. There's 36 cemeteries.
that are supposed to have been taken care
That
of?
have perpetual care site lots.
36 of them.
There's 36
Okay.
cemeteries with many lots in each, so there's hundreds.
Okay, well, of the 36 that are supposed to have been done,
Yeah.
how many were done last year?
Last year, none.
None at all?
No.
I thought there was something, there was money in
The
the,
last time,
that was, okay,
the
well,
last
the
time we
year,
mowed was once in 2008.
5 years ago,
Yes.
how many of those 36 were mowed?
We don't know. I don't.
I know we paid a lot, I don't know how many were mowed, we didn't monitor, we
no,
just.
I had sent an email, maybe I just sent it to Gordon, I sent it to somebody, with a photograph of each of the 36 cemeteries that we had gone and inventoried the stones. We had 453 of them. And we photographed every one of them when we were there, and the 36 were all clean. They were all clean. They weren't manicured and flowered and all the rest of it, but there was no brush, there was no weeds,
You can see
there
the
was no
stones.
poison ivy. And I sent the photographs, and I can do it again. But that's where they were within the last 3 or 4 years.
So they were all getting done? 'Cause I didn't,
Yes.
then I misunderstood that because I didn't believe, not last year, the year before, but within the past 5 years, everything that was supposed to have been taken care of was not, because there wasn't enough money to pay the landscape, I guess, to,
Yeah, but the big ones, the 6 big ones,
Are being taken care of.
Hopkins Mills, yeah, the
They're
lines
already
up.
taken care of by the
Those were taken
cemetery.
care of, so you were talking about basically 30 or so cemeteries that are 30 by 40 feet. So they go in and they clip all the brush down and any limbs that have fallen in, they get them out of there. So it was easy to cover that with the $4,000 that we were paying.
There were
Okay.
years that we paid, we bought somebody a lawnmower to do it. We've done a lot of things. So, I mean, we just.
And on that note,
Now is now.
Right.
on that note, we're gonna move forward with it at the next, council meeting, which is next Thursday, to adopt the budget, and we'll address it at that time. Quickly, because I'm looking at the time.
I just have one question.
Yes,
If somebody came into town hall tomorrow
yep,
and said, I've just buried my mother and I want perpetual.
we're not
care
taking
at
any more.
cemetery."
We stopped
We
years ago.
stopped it.
I wanna say at least 4 years
Yeah,
ago, 5
we
years ago.
stopped.
We stopped
We stopped,
about 5
Yeah, it
years
was
ago.
2014.
yeah, we stopped because we
It's
knew
just
we
not
couldn't do it.
sustainable.
We couldn't do it, so we stopped taking them. Okay?
And Situate puts in a line item every year. That's-
Yes.
But that's only for 13 cemeteries.
All right, moving on, we have a resolution for the impound fee increase. The ordinance, the dog, or animal control ordinance passed. We have a resolution because we're increasing the fees of the impoundment. It was $2, we want to increase it to $5. We have a resolution for that.
Want me to read that?
Yes, Heidi, if you would read that, and we need it to be quiet so everyone can hear it. Thank you.
Resolution of the town of Foster, of the Foster Town Council, subject to collaring of dogs, impoundment and disposition of uncollared dogs. Whereas Rhode Island statute Title 4, Chapter 4-13, Section 4-13-15 outlines the ability of Rhode Island cities and towns to require the owner and keeper of any impounded dog to pay the pound keeper for the expenses incurred for keeping an uncollared dog, that expense not to exceed $2 per day, and whereas 2 of the 39 cities and towns have separate language within said statute allowing them the right to change their impounding fees, with fees not to exceed a set amount as approved by their town councils. Now therefore be it resolved, the town council of the town of Foster respectfully requests the following language specific to the town of Foster be added to section 4-13-15 of Title 4, Chapter 4-13, a Rhode Island General Law Book 1A, stating that the town council of the town of Foster may provide by ordinance for an impounding fee not to exceed $15 per day.
That's the resolution. We have to send this to Mr. Chippendale and Mr. Rogers to have it go through legislation. Do I have a motion?
Can I ask you a question, Chris?
Oh,
I'm sorry. No, but do you think we should put both of them on one resolution, the money, the fees that have to go on?
I think it has to be 2 separate ones.
I
I'm
think
not
it's
sure.
separate.
I think it has to be 2 separate.
Two separate, okay.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we submit it to this resolution to Mr. Chippendale and Mr. Rogers.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on, I looked in Sugar Sink, Sue, and I do not see the resolution
It's the
for,
first one on the top, 2019
is it there?
Yeah,
state
it's
funding.
there.
I didn't see it.
That's okay. Want to read mine?
I don't want to read it, but somebody can. If you need me to, I will. Resolution in support of additional, do you have?
It's in your thing, I can.
Okay, wait 1 minute. Let me, just because I closed it down, it doesn't,
Do you want me to do it, Denise? I've got it up.
do you have it up?
Yes.
Thank you. So,
Okay.
go ahead.
This is a resolution in support of additional state funding for education. Whereas education is the cornerstone of our society, the rights and liberties of all citizens, our various levels of government, and the multitude of social programs available to all citizens. And whereas the Rhode Island Constitution provides for, in relevant part, as Article 12, Section 1, that it is the duty of the General Assembly to promote public schools and to secure to the people the advantages and opportunities of education. And whereas, over time, the General Assembly and the Rhode Island Department of Education have passed an assortment of laws and regulations mandating minimum education curriculum requirements for all public schools without providing for associated funding from the state revenues. And whereas the General Assembly and Rhode Island Department of Education have provided less and less state revenue funds to assist regional and local community organized public school programs to meet the mandated educational curriculum requirements. And whereas regional and local community organized public school programs have, by law, been required to cover the funding gap created by the insufficient state funding for mandated educational curriculum programs. And whereas local governments have had to increase local property and tangible tax revenues to raise additional revenue to fulfill their legal obligations for minimum public education curriculum requirements imposed on them by the state.
Thank you. Sorry.
And whereas the Foster Community has been forced to unfairly and disproportionately tax their residents and businesses to make up the state funding shortfall for state-required public education programs. Where am I? Oh my God.
Now therefore.
All right, okay. Now therefore, be it resolved that the town council of the town of Foster hereby requests that the General Assembly, the Office of the Governor, and the Rhode Island Department of Education initiate a statewide dialogue to address the issue of public education curriculum requirements and state-sponsored funding for these requirements to establish a fair, equitable, and sustainable state-funded program to support public education. Be it further resolved that a reduction in local tax burdens will reduce a regressive tax burden and provide local property owners with much-needed tax relief. And be it further resolved that the town clerk is hereby instructed to submit a copy of this resolution to the town of Foster's state senator and state representative in the Rhode Island General Assembly, all the cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island, all of the school committees in the state of Rhode Island, and all superintendents of schools in the state of Rhode Island, in consideration of their support of additional state funding for education. This resolution shall take effect upon passage by a resolution of the Foster Town Council at a meeting held on March 28, 2019.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we send this in to Mike Chippendale and Gordon to be presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to motor vehicle abatement.
I'll make a motion that we approve the abatements submitted by the tax assessor in the amount of $484.78.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And that concludes the open session. Any future agenda items? We do have a special council meeting next Thursday.
Thursday.
What time?
It's like a TV board.
What time?
What time works for everybody?
We're all gonna be saying.
What time you do not
I'm
need?
gonna get inoculated.
Yeah, right, so, it's 5 o'clock, can you read though, you want 5? You want to try 5:30 instead?
5:30.
5:30. Okay, 5:30.
5:30.
Thank you, next Thursday. Thank you all for coming out, have a good night, good to see you. Okay.
Sure, we'll crush
Yeah.
That's the bar.
4.
4. No. Yeah, 4.
Thank you. Bye. And I'll accept the motion to go into executive session.
Cheryl has it in front of her.
I move to go into executive closed session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-42-4 for the reasons stated in Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5 for discussion on work sessions regarding collective bargaining, contract negotiations, litigation according to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5 and A2.
Second.
Second, yeah.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.